The words hit like shattered glass against my skin as I stood in the hotel lobby, the soft hum of chatter freezing in the air. "Get this beggar out," my father said loudly enough for everyone to hear. For a moment I thought he was joking, that cruel, dry humor he used when he wanted to remind me of my place. But then I saw the security guard's awkward hesitation, his hand hovering near my elbow, unsure if he should actually escort me out. I could feel every set of eyes turning toward me. My mother looked away, pretending to adjust her bracelet, while my sister Victoria stood there with that same smirk I'd seen since childhood, the one that said she'd won again. I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let it show. I straightened my back and met my father's cold stare. The marble floor beneath my heels clicked as I walked away, every step echoing through the grand lobby. Not one of them stopped me, not even my mother. When I reached my car in the underground garage, the calmness that had carried me through began to unravel. My hands trembled as I started the engine. For 35 years I had been their safety net, their fixer, their walking bank account. But tonight, they had turned me into an outcast, in front of their friends, their colleagues, their world. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply opened my phone, logged into my business account, and began the quietest act of revenge I could imagine. One by one, I revoked every transaction connected to that night. The banquet catering, the champagne fountain my mother insisted on, the luxury suite bookings, the flights for out-of-town relatives, even the Maldives honeymoon my sister had bragged about. Each payment had come from me. They thought my father had paid, using the retirement package he pretended to have. But the truth was, I had funded everything. Through my company's account, under my name, with contracts that clearly stated ownership. The more I canceled, the lighter I felt. By the time I reached my driveway, the first call came. Then another. Then another. I let them all ring out. When the pounding on my front door started an hour later, I looked through the peephole and saw Jared, Victoria's husband, his face red, shirt wrinkled. "You need to fix this," he shouted through the door. "They canceled everything. The hotel, the food, the flights. You did this, didn't you?" I leaned against the wood, calm and deliberate. "Sounds like someone didn't check who actually owned those payments," I said softly. He blinked, confused. "You're punishing the entire family?" "No," I replied. "I'm protecting my investment. There's a difference." I could almost hear the confusion turning into fear on the other side of the door. "They're your parents," he hissed. "They called me a beggar," I said. "Now they'll learn what it means to lose access to the hand they bit." He didn't have an answer. He muttered something about lawyers before storming off, but I didn't care. I'd already prepared for this moment years ago. I went to my office, opened a locked drawer, and pulled out a thick folder labeled Contingency. Inside were contracts, invoices, and legal authorizations with my signature. Every document proving I was the financial owner of the hotel venue, catering and travel services. I didn't plan revenge overnight. I planned protection. It just happened to become revenge. The next morning, my phone was a symphony of desperation. My mother's trembling voice asking me to be reasonable. My father's cold silence, broken only by a forwarded invoice demanding payment. Victoria's angry texts accusing me of ruining her wedding week. I ignored them all. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started transferring funds from canceled accounts into a new one, my own. When my email pinged with a message from Franklin, my parents' longtime accountant, I almost smiled. He wanted to discuss irregularities he'd found in my parents' finances, specifically regarding a beachfront condo they claimed was gifted to them by a private investor. "I can't trace the payments," he said politely. "That's because the investor was me," I replied. There was a long silence on the call. "Would you like to file a declaration?" he finally asked. "Yes," I said. "And make sure it's official." I ended the call and sat back, feeling something shift inside me. For the first time, I wasn't reacting to their betrayal. I was directing the consequences. By noon, I was in my lawyer's office. Tiffany was sharp, efficient, and terrifyingly good at her job. She listened without interrupting, typing notes as I laid out every detail. The years of financial dependence, the forged appearances, the emotional manipulation disguised as family loyalty. "They'll try to call your bluff," she said finally. "They already did," I answered. Within 24 hours, Tiffany's office served my parents' official notices: a cease and desist for slander, a demand for repayment of misused funds, and a property reassignment order for the condo. The moment the papers were delivered, my phone lit up again. My mother left a voicemail, tearful, frantic. "Rachel, please. You're destroying us over nothing. You've always been so dramatic. Dramatic." The word they'd always used to silence me when I tried to set boundaries. I deleted the voicemail. By the end of the week, the social masks began to crack. My parents' friends whispered. Victoria posted a filtered sunset with a caption dripping with self-pity. "Some people only show up when there's money." Glad I know who my real family is, I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because while they tried to control the story online, I controlled the truth. The documents, the contracts, the receipts. Franklin confirmed what I already knew. They had been funneling money from my accounts for years, labeling it as family investments. Kitchen renovations, vacations, my father's classic car restoration, all funded by me. When I met Tiffany again, she glanced over the documents and said, "We can file this as financial fraud." "Do it," I said. The process moved fast. My parents received a formal court notice within a week. I didn't warn them. I didn't explain. I'd spent my whole life explaining. This time, the evidence would speak for me. 3 weeks later, the court hearing was scheduled. The irony was not lost on me. The same family who once bragged about their social status would now be standing before a judge, explaining how they accidentally used their daughter's money to fund their lifestyle. The night before the hearing, my phone buzzed with a message from Victoria. "If you go through with this, I'll never forgive you." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I locked the phone and set it face down. Forgiveness was never the point. Freedom was. When the morning came, I put on my navy suit, the same one I had worn the night my father called me a beggar, and walked into the courthouse with Tiffany beside me. My parents sat across the aisle, stiff and pale. My mother avoided my eyes. My father stared straight ahead. The judge called the case to order, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to prove my worth. Tiffany presented the evidence with calm precision. Transaction records, contracts, statements from Franklin, even screenshots of messages where my parents had asked me for temporary loans. Every request, every favor, every lie, printed, highlighted, undeniable. Their lawyer tried to argue it was a misunderstanding, that I had willingly supported them, but the judge wasn't moved. Finally, she turned to me and asked, "Miss Parker, What outcome are you seeking? I stood, voice steady. Truth on paper, I said. That's all. The gavel hit the desk. Granted. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no gasps. Just quiet finality. But that silence was louder than any applause. As I walked out of the courtroom, Tiffany placed a hand on my shoulder. You just changed the balance of power forever, she said. I smiled faintly. No, I replied. I just stopped paying for it. That night, for the first time in years, I slept without my phone beside me. The morning after the verdict, the air felt different. The city hummed outside my window, but inside my apartment, there was a stillness I hadn't known in years. No phone calls, no desperate emails, no whispered demands. Just quiet, the kind that carries both relief and weight. I poured a cup of coffee and sat by the window, watching sunlight bounce off the glass towers across the street. For decades, my family had dictated my life, my choices, my time, my money. Tonight, none of that mattered anymore. The gavel's sound from the courtroom still echoed in my mind. A low vibration of justice served. They had called me a beggar. They had thought my silence was weakness. And yet, here I was, holding the balance of power, legally, financially, morally. Victoria's social media posts continued, each one dripping with subtle resentment. A sunset here, a motivational quote there, all carefully curated to imply she was the victim. I didn't respond. Words were cheap. Documents weren't. Every screenshot, every bank record, every signed contract was a reminder that the reality they had built on my generosity had finally collapsed. It wasn't enough to simply win in court. I wanted permanence. I wanted the lesson etched into every ledger, every account, every corner of their lives. I contacted Franklin, the family accountant, and asked for a complete audit of the trust and all financial accounts since 2017. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every emergency family expense would be accounted for. The findings were staggering. $18,700 withdrawn the week I graduated college, labeled as emergency repairs, but actually funding Victoria's kitchen renovation. $9,000 marked as education expenses that had paid for front-row concert tickets and a spa weekend for my mother. $34,000 funneled into my father's vintage Mustang restoration, a car he had once described as my reward for raising responsible children. They had drained accounts under my name and then had the audacity to call me ungrateful. I didn't want to press criminal charges. That wasn't my goal. What I wanted was accountability, a permanent record, a truth on paper that could never be denied. Tiffany helped me file motions for financial restitution and trust misuse documentation. They had 30 days to respond or settle privately. By the third week, their panic was palpable. A message from my mother arrived. I'm scared, Rachel. Please don't ruin the family over money. We'll make it right. I stared at it for a long moment. No apology, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing, just fear. The only language they understood. I replied with a single line, ruin. A day later, Victoria posted another filtered image on Instagram, captioned, "Some people only show up when there's money involved. Glad I know who my real family is." I didn't comment. I didn't need to. Online, they could perform. But in court, every word, every signature, every dollar was accounted for. Their carefully curated illusion was crumbling. Finally, the day arrived when Tiffany confirmed the title of the beachfront condo had been legally transferred to my name. The taxes were filed, the payments accounted for, the property untouchable. The family had lost their crown jewel, the centerpiece of their social standing. the physical embodiment of the life they had funded with my labor and my generosity. Weeks passed. No calls, no emails, no desperate pleas, just silence. Glorious, clean, unbroken silence. It was the kind of peace that comes when you stop carrying other people's weight on your shoulders. And then, one morning, an envelope slid under my door. No return address, no stamp, just a photo from the family banquet. Everyone was dressed in silver and navy, glasses clinking beneath crystal chandeliers. In the background, mid-turn, I was caught leaving, the very moment they had tried to erase me. On the back, Victoria had scrawled 5 words in her familiar slanted handwriting. This was the moment it all fell apart. I held it for a long time, then fed it into the shredder. Because what had fallen apart wasn't family, it was the illusion they had built with my money, my silence, my desperate need to belong. And once that illusion burned away, what remained wasn't ashes, it was freedom. I sold the condo and used the proceeds to create the Parker Foundation, a grant for first-generation women putting themselves through school without family support. The first donations went to young women I knew personally, ambitious, determined, unbroken by the same forces that had tried to crush me. I wanted to turn the power I had reclaimed into something meaningful, something enduring, something that reminded me I could rise without apology. 6 months later, I had no direct contact with my parents or Victoria. Our relationship ended permanently by unspoken agreement. They had tried to manipulate, control, and humiliate me for years, but I had learned the ultimate lesson. Sometimes the healthiest family resolution is distance maintained with the same commitment you once gave to financing their lives. Revenge had never been loud. It had never been dramatic. It was patient, meticulous, and precise. It had been built on contracts, on ledgers, on proof. And in the quiet aftermath, I realized the true cost of silence and the true power of speaking through action. I returned to my office, the city skyline glowing through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and opened a new folder on my computer. Parker Foundation, Projects. I typed the names of the first recipients, checking each one against my carefully crafted list. Each grant was a victory, not against my family, but against the forces that had tried to limit me. Each dollar represented independence, resilience, and justice. That night I poured a glass of wine and leaned back, letting the warmth spread through me. My phone stayed quiet. No emergencies, no guilt trips, no demands. Just peace, hard-earned and undeniable. Sometimes revenge isn't fire and fury. Sometimes it's precision, patience, and patience met with consequence. Sometimes it's not about humiliation, but about balance. Not about punishment, but about clarity. And sometimes it's about finally walking away, knowing that the ledger has been settled, the truth documented, and your dignity intact. I looked at the city outside, lights twinkling like broken promises now made irrelevant. The family that had called me a beggar had learned too late that the value of a person isn't what they give when coerced. It's what they choose to claim when they finally reclaim themselves. The truth, I realized, was my ultimate revenge. And in that truth there was freedom.